Hey, Kristie. Great to have you here today. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. You're in Toronto, and I know you're pretty busy with a lot of the projects you're working on. What exactly what's at the top of your list these days?
Top of my list of what I'm working on or what I'm
Yeah.
focused on.
Oh, well, let's go with working on first.
So right now, I'm kind of split between working with B2B SaaS startups, usually with companies that are kind of under the 1 million ARR mark and trying to scale. And then the other side is working as a consultant with other partners with commercial brands on their Web3 strategy. So mainly around building a Web3 loyalty program is kind of the main thing. In some cases that involves building NFTs, tokenizing things, governments coming to us asking about creating stable coins, kind of a mixed bag right now.
Yeah, so NFT loyalty programs are, at least in our space, are kind of a hot topic these days. There's a whole bunch of Fortune 500 companies who are diving into that. What's your what's your angle, or like what kind of companies are you working with?
So right now we're focused on fashion brands and working with brands that are wanting to get into attracting a younger audience, because one of our partners that we work with is a music management company. So one of the things that we bring to the table for these brands that want to get in front of a younger audience is doing live events and activations through, house and techno parties, festivals, stuff like that.
Awesome. Anything involved with ticketing, or is that sort of a different area?
Different area. So in terms of the music side, typically it's more the promoters that kind of handle ticketing. So it's not part of the business that can be like part of that loyalty program. But in the case of creating like a VR, AR experience or Metaverse event, ticketing can definitely be a part in that use case.
I see a future where it's all tied together.
I think potentially down the road, it's just with traditional kind of music and events and how they work. We're not there yet to make that work of all having it on the blockchain. But
maybe, I agree.
In a couple of years.
And before this call, we agreed not to talk too much about technology, the backbone of the infrastructure. But I think, yes, the technology is not quite built out yet. And it's going to take people like yourself with the vision and the execution to like create those ideas and put that all together. And the technological side of tying things together, such as NFTs, ticketing, merch, marketing, loyalty, community building, all those things. I imagine you're focusing a lot on community building.
That's part of it. We're mainly focused on strategy, kind of building out the concept, marketing campaigns, because my background is all around marketing. And then a little bit of it is around, I shouldn't say a little bit of it, but part of that concept is, it's like in Web 2, you buy a brand, and Web 3, you join a brand. So it's kind of shifting companies' mindset around customer base, around building a community. Which is one of the big benefits that Web3 brings is, if you're selling or gifting away tokens and building up your customer base, you can add utility in there where they're able to contribute, whether it's voting rights on things or, supplying artwork or things like on that. So a big part of what we try to communicate to brands that are at least interested in getting into Web3 is, hey, this is about building a closer connection with your customer. It's not just a Web2 transactional, we make something, we sell it to you, we offer you a discount. It's involving your customer in the process.
Yeah. I think that's, well, you tell me, how easily or how well have traditional companies adopted that? I think it's a total like mind shift, right?
Yeah, it's slow. I mean, there's been a fashion brand that we've been working with for 8 or 9 months now, just on educating them on why they need a Web3 loyalty program. And that's been, I mean, for my business partner that's worked in this space since like 2016, 2017, she tokenized music in like 2017, 2018. Like years ago, her whole focus was educating customers about blockchain, what NFTs are before they were even called NFTs. And now that some of that language, people at least have heard it before, maybe they don't really know it or understand it. There's kind of this buzz and a little bit of FOMO of, oh, well, we need to learn about Web3. This is something everyone's talking about. So it's a little bit easier to at least start the conversation, but it is a very big kind of shift in mindset. And huge shift in technology and process and tech stack. So it's a long game though. Like I don't think that none of the clients that we're working with are going into this with like a short-term mindset of, hey, we're gonna, release an NFT collection, make a bunch of money. These are brands that they're looking at, building out a loyalty program that's going to probably take a year to build out, and then building out a community for the long run. So these are years until they kind of see some of that ROI and have that community built. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the approach that Starbucks is taking? Have you followed their campaign at all? Starbucks Odyssey, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
I think it's smart that they went about it in a small kind of lean MVP approach with small collections, testing out the market. Because I come from the tech startup background, that's always my mindset of, start with like a pilot or an MVP, test it, is it selling well? I think that's a really smart approach because in 2021, when we're at the peak of, everybody's talking about NFTs and things are selling for millions of dollars. It was all about, have a like 10,000 or 20,000 collection, and Starbucks most recent collection, and they're a, giant corporation. I think it was only 5,000 pieces were in their most recent collection. I think it's interesting that they're selling the NFTs. One of the things that we've been kind of advocating and, kind of trying to build with clients is, well, what about if you're gifting these tokens that then they can use? And a big thing that we're trying to do to bring it into mass adoption is, well, they don't need to know that it's an NFT. Let's not use that language. Let's just have, maybe they scan something or they, download something on their phone. They input their email address. They don't even know that they have a wallet. They're collecting a token. They understand the term token. And that gives them, different perks and access to things. And then educating them from there on, okay, well, how do they use that? What can they use it for? Because the Web3 OGs, crypto natives, is such a small part of the market. And so for Web2 commercial brands making that transition, it's like you have to make it seamless. Like when the internet started and social media started, you're not trying to educate people on what social media is or what the internet is or how the internet works. You just try to create a seamless experience where there's benefits. It's easy for them to engage and get started without them having to even know how any of that stuff works or know any of the lingo or language.
For sure. And Starbucks has taken that approach. It is essentially a Web 2 experience for the user. They still own any NFTs or digital assets that they buy for the, in the Odyssey program, but ultimately they can export things to their own wallet, personal wallet. So for listeners who may not be well versed at this, why Web3 then? If it feels like Web 2 and it looks like Web 2, why does it have to be Web3? Why does it have to be on the blockchain? What are the advantages?
And that's the main question that I get pushback from when talking to brands. So there's a couple of key benefits. One of them is by doing it on the blockchain, it's public information. So it's a little bit easier to track what other things people have in their wallet. So if you are selling shoes and you want to know what other brands of shoes are your customers buying, by having things as like a digital twin where they're buying a physical asset, but they also get, a tracked thing. There's that component. There's the component of verification. So if you're doing things where you're having that kind of like 2D marker, to ensure that it's like reducing counterfeit, because you're able to validate and authenticate things on the blockchain.
Sure.
There's secondary market sales. That's another revenue stream. And I think just in general, the fact that Web3 opens up new revenue streams, it's like, well, now digital fashion is a thing. So if you're doing, if you're a clothing or a fashion retailer, you can then create a digital world, whether it's a metaverse or just some sort of AR, VR experience where people are now wanting to use or buy digital fashion. Whether that's buying fashion for an avatar or having, just a filter that they use on social media. It opens up new opportunities for products and services that didn't exist before. And again, it's still new. Like, I think a lot of people think that the only people in Web3 are gamers, which,
right.
Yeah, for like the early stages, I think it is, but that's going to change as, eventually more people start to adopt it.
What do you think is going to be the attraction for people to like a metaverse, a virtual world? Because the adoption has been really slow. Let's be honest about that. And I don't doubt that it's going to happen, but what's going to spur it on? What's going to be the trigger or the tipping point for real normal people?
Everyday people.
Yeah, spending time in a metaverse.
Yeah, so I think one of it is going to be, it's the younger generation adopting it, like the younger generation that has grown up with, social media, everything's digital, everything's online. Instead of hanging out with their friends, they're texting their friends. I mean, my niece is 9 years old and she spends her time FaceTiming and, Facebook messaging her friends more than actually hanging out. So I think that's part of it, is like that generation then, growing and having more buyer dollars, that then there's more opportunities. I think part of it too is for the generation kind of just above that aren't, gamers and doing everything virtually. I think part of it is, if you can create virtual like AR, VR experiences that you can maybe like have the headset and experience from home, I think a big tipping point will be, like marketing those and making it more accessible by then, like when there's more demand for it, there's more supply, then the price comes down. So when, the headsets become more affordable, I think that's going to be a big tipping point. And I think it's going to take a lot of brands adopting, but like slowly offering these experiences to get people excited. Some of the things that we've kind of, I say we, like myself and our partners, as we're kind of thinking of, well, how do we get more people to adopt this? It's okay, well, we've got connections with different media outlets. So what if we do a campaign with a brand that then it's promoted on a media outlet, and maybe we can, have some sort of campaign where it's like, hey, if you're, scanning or involving in this contest to get these tokens, maybe there's a contest to win a headset. I think things like that are going to get people slowly to adopt it. Like out of my friend group, and my friend groups are people in their 30s, 40s. I only know like 2 people that own a headset. But I think that the more people talk about it, the more experiences that are offered, getting, the headsets at physical events so people can try it on, experience it, test it out. I've seen that happen at festivals like years ago.
Sure.
It's like,
they have to become less clunky too. And
less clunky and more affordable.
They should just be like a pair of sunglasses. I mean, I'm saying they should be, but the technology needs to be there for that too.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at like cell phones, like when, the portable phone started, it was like huge, like as big as your face. And then they slowly got smaller and smaller and they got faster. It's like with any new technology, it starts off expensive and clunky, and we just got to keep iterating on it.
Sure. As you're talking, I'm sort of like envisioning going to a concert in your living room and actually just putting on or a sporting event and feeling as if you're actually there. I mean, is that realistic, you think? Like that could happen, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. So my business partner that actually kind of was the one that like pulled me into Web3, she's been talking about this for years of, hey, like, imagine being at home and you put on a headset and you can actually interact with your friends that are at home and feel like you're at this concert. Like there's a lot of, things that need to happen to get to that point, but at least the point of putting on a headset and experiencing being at that concert, I think that's totally, within the next couple of years, hopefully sooner.
Pretty wild concept. I'm trying to imagine it or envision it for the performer. They'd still want a full house, but for the consumer, I mean, you can basically go to a Beyonce concert anywhere in the world, anytime she's playing, if the technology is there.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to replace it. Like, I don't think that it's going to get to a point where Beyonce is, performing for an empty room. I think
I was picturing that too, by the way. Like, that would be terrible.
Yeah, it would be horrible because the whole part is like energy and feeding off that energy.
Yeah, of course.
But I think what Web3 opens the door for is making it more accessible for people that, one, can't afford to pay. I don't even know how much Beyonce concert tickets sell for. I'm assuming like cheap seats are at least like $300 to $500. But it makes it more affordable, more accessible. And then what about the people that are in, other countries that are never going to have the opportunity for Beyonce to tour in their country? So I think it's opening up a new revenue stream for people that otherwise couldn't engage or partake, that now they can, instead of fully replacing, in person. Similar to how, you and I are meeting on Zoom right now, but I'm sure you still have meetings with people and engage in real life. It's just another method of connecting with people.
Going back to the loyalty programs. So you talked a lot about the advantages and all of the benefits for the organization, for the company. How about consumers? So something like consumer brand, like let's say Nike or Coca-Cola, what's in it for the everyday consumer?
Yeah, great
being
question.
Part of their community.
Great question. So parts of it are around, you're investing and buying a product. If there's a digital token that is part of that, there's additional perks of, maybe you hold on to it for a while, it increases in value, you want to sell it, you're making money off that. It's more of an investment than just like a transactional buy. A product. So that's one benefit. And I think in the early stages of NFTs, everybody looked at that as like the only benefit in buying NFTs is to sell them, versus now there's that part, but there's also, well, now you're part of their community. What does that token give you access to? And it could be a number of things. Maybe there is an exclusive Discord that they can engage with. Maybe there's voting rights on new products. There's access to, maybe by having a specific token, then when the brand launches their next line, you get first access to buy that limited edition thing. There's perks like airdrops of free things or free physical merchandise that you get as being a holder. So those are some of the opportunities that open up for the end user that's buying it. But I think for end users and buyers that really love a brand, I think it's being closer to the brand and being able to be a part of that community that co-collaborates building stuff. Like if you think of fashion industry is one example, but if you think of, the cost, the money and the time that goes into developing a new product, manufacturing, testing, I think, so this is one of the benefits that I see is like both sides for the company and the end user. The company, by involving end users in, hey, maybe we just do this as a digital thing, test it out to get feedback of, hey, do
market
people
research?
Like exactly, before investing time to a product. Same thing as you think about like designing and building a car. Well, it's much more affordable to design a virtual version that people can then in the metaverse get in, sit, take it for a test drive, see what they like. So yeah, it's like you as the buyer gets to be part of that experience, and it feels special. You feel appreciated. You feel like you're involved in that brand. By owning a piece of that brand, you then kind of become like an additional salesperson. If you're involved in collaborating on a design for a pair of Nike shoes, because you are one of the say there's like 50 exclusive NFTs that if you get one of these 50, you get to vote on like new features and colors and things like that. How cool is that you get to say, I'm one of those people and I got to pick some of those colors, and these Nikes that I bought, this color was inspired by my hair and that's why I voted on that color. Like it's a cool emotional connection that you have with the brand that you don't have in Web 2.
Yeah, and I think that can expand through lots of industries. What other applications are you seeing or are you envisioning? Like food and beverage, travel, even auto. Like what have you seen examples of that, or are you working with companies like that in other
Uh,
industries?
Yeah, so like the industries that we've kind of stuck with outside of fashion have been a little
Hmm.
bit in the automotive, kind of talking about what we just talked about of like, building like a virtual showroom.
Sure.
What are the benefits to the end user and the company? Um, I know we've spoken to like a grocery chain. That one, I haven't been super involved, so I'm not super confident on the use case there. Music for sure, like DJs that can, release exclusive tracks
Sure. Yeah.
or, merchandise, things like that for building out a community. Media outlets, so global TV.
What about
Like,
music? What about music? You mentioned music. Like the promise of music NFTs, right? Has it's floated around for a few years now, and I know there's been some success. What are your thoughts on where, uh, I guess, decentralized ownership of musical content is going to go? Um, yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, there was success in the early days and then it kind of flopped and it wasn't really a thing. And a
Hmm.
big pushback that I hear from people is, well, why would I do it as a token or why would I buy it as an NFT when I can just, record it and have it? And
Sure.
the benefit
Or
is
access it daily
yeah,
on
yeah.
Spotify.
I mean, I think, and actually I know that these streaming services are moving towards, having a decentral platform and using it as tokens for some of the benefits that we've talked about. So I think that will become the norm, that you're then buying a token either to listen to a track, own a track, because it could be like your one use case that I've heard is people buy a token to get a specific set of time that they're allowed to listen or like borrow that music for. I think in terms of the artist,
What do you
though,
mean by that? What do you mean by that?
yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird use case that I'm like not super
Like
like
only you
sure
can listen
about.
to that song
No,
during
no,
that
no,
time?
no. Well,
Or you
so
actually own it for a year?
basically, yeah, like you own that track for a year. It's kind of if you think of like the subscription you pay Spotify, every month and you can listen to music for that month. You don't own it.
Hmm.
In this case, you would say for $2, you can rent a Beyonce song and listen to it for say 6 months. I'm not sure how I feel about that use case. Like I feel like there's still a lot of holes in that one. But I think in terms of use cases that I can see useful in music, it's building that fan base of like the crazy loyal fans. Like if you take a DJ, for example, and they're releasing a limited amount of tokens that whoever buys those or gets gifted them gets first access to music or maybe exclusive
Yep.
music that is not released, or they get a chance to win hanging out with them backstage
Yeah.
at a music festival. I think those are more use cases
That
that
I see. Yeah.
are more
Yeah.
relevant, at least in like today's market, as well as access to virtual events. Maybe if it's like if you own the headset and you want to tune in virtually or digitally to a concert, having that as a token that you buy to get access, that's way more affordable than a
Sure.
concert or festival ticket. I think those
Yeah.
use cases have legs right now. The other ones,
Sure.
and the jury's
Well,
not out yet.
some other use cases that I've thought of, and I'm not sure about the legalities, but one is if you do own or partial ownership of let's call it a song, you can use it for your own marketing, put it as a backdrop of your website, or use it in a commercial if, as long as the smart contract allows for that. The other one would be royalties, but I think that there are legal issues associated with that, meaning that every time a song is played, you actually get a portion of the royalties, but I'm pretty sure that that's not going to play out.
Are you talking about every song? When you say every time the song is played, you get a portion of the royalties, you mean you as the NFT buyer or the artist?
Yeah, as the NFT buyer.
NFT
Yeah,
buyer, yeah.
and,
So
and,
that
and the
in that
artist
case,
too.
it's
I
like
mean,
a
basically,
tokenized.
you're funding the artist up front by buying the NFT. paying them, say, $1,000 for a portion of their NFT or a portion of their song, 1,000th of their song, right? And instead of them getting royalties every time the song is played, you as the NFT owner get a portion of those royalties. You and the other NFT owners.
Yeah, I think it's
Personally.
split. It's like the creator
Yep.
of the content gets royalties, and it's also the people that are investing and buying it. I think, I mean, in that case, it is like a securities. So
Right.
there's a lot of legalities and things, but it is possible. It has been done. My business partner has done that before. So yeah, it is possible. I think it's more applicable for the kind of emerging artists that don't have the money to, like, you know, fund
or
and,
a
you know, all
record
these
contract.
management.
Instead of a record contract, you're getting funded, basically crowdfunded to
Exactly.
to produce an album or whatever.
Exactly. Yep.
You know, I think that that's the real promise of this space for artists. You know, NFTs sort of like the NFT craze of 2021, 2022 really kind of destroyed that vision a little bit because it got so out of hand. And the reality is that most of the PFPs, most of the art that was bought and sold is really worth nothing.
Yeah, there's no utility. That was the first wave, was just, hey, you're buying art.
Exactly.
You're buying something that people think that with enough FOMO and enough hype around the project, they're going to make money on selling. And I'm glad that kind of, I don't say crashed and burned, but, you know, it definitely like cooled off, because
came
now
down to earth, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Now we're back at earth, and it's okay. Well, what are real ways that are long-term ways to do it? And it's funny because I still get asked. I'll get the occasional project come to say, "Oh, how do I create like a viral marketing campaign for this meme coin that we're doing?" I'm like, I'm not the right person for you. I'm not going to support that, because that's part of the problem.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we get asked all the time to connect people with influencers. And, you know, it's a sketchy business. Because, well, at least to me, the term influencer implies pump and dump in some capacity. Now, there are certainly credible influencers who, it's just like anyone else who shills a product, you know, who, LeBron James doing commercials for Pepsi or McDonald's. Okay, fine. You know, it's not a scam. You know, it's a legitimate product, and he's a legitimate person who's actually thought about the projects that he takes on and does not take on. NFT and Web3 influencers may be a different story. So how do you balance that? Do you work with influencers at all?
Haven't yet, but it's on the radar for some long-term projects that we're doing. But we're using influencers not for conversion, just for brand awareness. And I think part of it is kind of shifting and putting the onus on the influencers that, hey, like, if you're going to be marketing and promoting a product, you should know at least a little bit about it. And I think that, yes, while people have abused that, I think there's still potential for having influencers be brand ambassadors for projects that have real utility and are working towards doing something valuable in the world.
Yeah, I think the term brand ambassador is a much better term. Certainly has more credibility to me. And
it's like the term influencer is a little bit cringy nowadays, just because of, like, I don't know if you've seen the documentary about like Fire Festival, that kind of just really shone a light on the problem in the industry. But again, it's like anything that's new. Influencers was like a new thing. You know, there's always friction that comes and stuff that blows up in your face. And then you learn, okay, there's, you know, we have to be careful and be more ethical about how we go about doing this.
Yeah. And I think anyone, you know, I think it helps if they're part of the community, either organically or recruited to be part of the community of whatever the product or the service is. And so that kind of brings me to community. How do you, for your clients, what does community mean? And like, where do they meet? How do they convene? How do they communicate with each other?
Yeah, so for my clients, what I've seen work is when it's more like the Web3 native community that they're trying to tap into, it's through Discord. So connecting with Other, like using other projects that have a community to tap into, doing collaborations, hopping on Twitter Spaces,
Sure.
doing real in-person events at like NFT NYC, or doing different meetups. Some of them happening over, Zoom and webinars. But yeah, I think is going to change. Like, I think for mainstream, expecting people to go on Discord won't be realistic.
That was my next question. Like, how long is that reality that we're living in Web3? How long is that going to last?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to just be a place for the crypto natives that like that platform, and they're very gung ho about it. But I think mainstream, we're going to have to find other ways to do it, because I don't think Discord will be it for the mainstream.
Yeah. Do you think it will look more like a metaverse? I mean, because I've definitely spoken with projects that they're working on that, like in essentially like taking Discord communities and migrating them to metaverses. And I should say that in quotes, metaverses, because there's different versions, whether it's like avatar based or text based, or ultimately, like we were talking about before, virtual reality, where actually you and I would be in the same room in a conversation.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of moving away from, and I say this in the most lovingly way possible, like nerds behind their laptop chatting, which I consider myself a nerd. I'm on Discord. But it's kind of moving away from that into a more organic, like how do everyday kind of mainstream people interact, and having it in a virtual space where you're actually talking or you're texting through things like that. I think I think it has to mimic what people are naturally already doing in physical and online communication.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because we've the past few years, pandemic and remote working and all these things that it was sort of happening already. Zoom existed before the pandemic, but it just became so normalized during that time when we had no other options, and it's stuck around. It has definitely stuck around. And look, Bankless Consulting is a global organization. We have consultants practically on every continent. And, we meet on a daily basis, or, some of us meet on a daily basis. So we're very comfortable with these virtual or remote interactions. I think they'll evolve, though. I think they'll evolve. I think they will become more realistic. And, this is pretty intimate. This is a great way to have a conversation, but it could be way better. Right? I mean, if the two of us felt like we were sitting across from each other in a room, the same room, in chairs, actually speaking directly to each other, it would feel different.
For sure.
It's not, like you said, it's not going to replace real life interaction, but it can simulate it.
Yeah. I mean,
that
there's
evolution
a lot
is happening. Yeah.
For sure. It's like there's limitations that happen, which I'm sure, I don't know if you have kids. I don't, but I have friends with kids that's like during the pandemic when they're having to be on, screen with their classroom. That's a really difficult thing to do. But I think in some cases that stayed, after a certain age, your attention span grows, but there's still those limitations, like body language is very limited in terms of this way. So I think moving towards, maybe kids will be in school in the metaverse after like a certain age. Again, it's like, it's long-term thinking, but I think it's like clearly as a society, we're taking steps with moving in that direction, with bringing things into more and more of a digital space that feels more like in person. Yeah.
And how does that play into your world as a digital or Web3 marketing expert?
I'm excited about it. Like, I'm usually pretty open to adopting technology. Like, I wasn't, like, before the pandemic, I was working remote for, I don't want to say like 6 or 7 years before the pandemic hit. So that was like a normal thing for me. And when everybody was kind of freaking out, like, oh, I hate it, I'm like, just give it some time. Like, there's so many benefits that come with it. But it is
Sure.
always about having that balance of, well, you need to have a social life and actually get outside for it to work so you don't go crazy. But yeah, I think it'll open up more opportunities to market in a different way. If you're in a virtual space, maybe there's, companies can sponsor the chairs that you're sitting in, the room, things like that.
Sure.
I think it's like anything that's new creates new opportunities to market to people, new products and services to create. So I'm excited about it. Sometimes I wish, though, that we could go back to just like living all as like a tribe outdoors when things are easier. And so I kind of flip flop between how I'm feeling that day.
You have to live in both worlds, I think.
Yeah,
Right. I mean,
you
you
gotta
have to
get
have
out in nature.
you got to get out in nature sometimes. So Web3 is a lot about adoption and new technology and things like that. And you're working with traditional companies, it sounds like, in at least some traditional companies.
And
how do you
Web3 startups as well that are kind of just building new platforms for Web3.
Nice. So how do you make people comfortable with new technology or new ideas? For sure. I mean, a lot of what you're doing is getting traditional organizations or advertisers to get more comfortable with community, with Web3 style of connecting with their consumers. Do you have a particular approach for building trust?
Yeah. So in a lot of cases, it's them seeking out us, so we don't have to do as much of that selling on why they need to do Web3. But in some cases, there is. I think a really important part is I basically take the same approach that I do when I'm educating tech clients on how to market and sell their product, because in the SaaS space, so software as a service, you're selling a product that's technology that your buyer doesn't understand. So my approach is always start by meeting them where they are. Use language and phrases that describe, hey, I understand where you are now, what metrics you're responsible for, what you're trying to do. So talking about, if I'm talking to a CMO or head of loyalty, it's, hey, I understand that you're trying to build out your member numbers. I understand that you're trying to increase the sales per your membership. I understand that you're trying to increase engagement of your audience. So you start with building that trust that says, hey, I understand where you are and what you're trying to do.
Right. What you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And then let's talk about, here are some opportunities that Web3 opens up, like digital fashion, like AR, VR experiences. And then we kind of talk about, here are some pain points that you're likely struggling with that Web2 can help you overcome. And then kind of paint a bit of that vision. I think the challenge and mistake, the mistake that a lot of people make is they go into, let me tell you about how cool this technology is and how it works. And it's like, you've already lost them. You've already lost them. You have to start with, I understand you. I understand what your pain points are and what you're trying to do. Let me help show you how this technology can solve those pain points for you without you having to understand anything about the technology. We're just focusing on benefits and pain points, because people will always be more motivated by pain or avoiding pain than they are by something better. So you can talk about that and dangle that carrot, but you have to speak to, here are the pain points and the frustrations and the challenges that you're having. Like, if you're really struggling with engagement right now with your audience, if you're really struggling with getting in front of a younger audience, and that's one of the things they're trying to do, here's how Web3 can help you do that. That is a lot more motivating than, hey, let me explain to you the blockchain and community and NFTs and then this cool tech, because they don't care about that.
Solid.
Yeah,
I agree. And, it's not much different than I guess other advertising or marketing that you've done in the past. It's just using new technology.
Exactly.
And the reality, I think, for companies and consumers is that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
The tech doesn't matter. It's what they're trying to do. It doesn't matter what blockchain you use. Doesn't matter if it's an NFT or if it's, something else. It's what are they trying to do?
Part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So your company is PurpleMeta, right?
Yeah.
Is PurpleMeta strictly Web3 marketing? Or do you also do Web2 marketing under that
So
heading as well?
we bridge the gap. So we work with Web2 companies that are transitioning into Web3. So we will do Web3, but also incorporating Web2 marketing strategies. Like you still need traditional PR, you still need, social media marketing, all those things. So yeah, I think you have to do both when you're working with companies that are coming from Web2, trying to get into Web3.
Yeah.
You have to do both.
Web 2.5.
Yeah,
Hybrid.
yeah.
I mean,
That's
those terms
how
are kind of thrown around a little bit these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of like vendors that we work with when they're like, yeah, like our technology is kind of like Web 2.5 because you can pull it with just their email, but then that also creates a wallet, but they don't really have to know that there's a wallet there. So yeah, it's kind of like baby steps of getting people comfortable with new stuff without having to educate them on what it is and how it works.
Yeah, that's good. I think bridging that gap and sort of blurring the transition is going to smooth the path for traditional companies to just get more comfortable with the technology or working with technology companies in Web3. And you have a blog.
Yeah, I started it. I don't know if I'm going to keep it up.
Can I say the name?
Yeah.
BlockchainBabe, right? BlockchainBabe.xyz. You wrote an amazing blog in February.
Thank you.
It's kind of like
when
a manifesto almost.
I'm gonna start a blog.
It's so good. Well, you said everything. I don't know that you need to blog again. I don't know that you need to do another post.
One and done.
Maybe. It's so good. It's so good. You covered a lot of topics. I think you're really thorough. And like you're spot on. A lot of this stuff stands up even 2 months later in Web3, which is a lifetime. I think it's a great guide for people to check out. So if you are thinking of use cases or don't know too much about NFTs, like really what NFTs are about, and check it out, blockchainbabe.xyz. That's Kristie's blog. She in February 2023, she wrote a great blog, and
I might be publishing some more. I have more written. It's just
nice.
Finding the time to blog when it's like a side project. We've got
writing is
the
hard.
Client work always starts first. So finding the time to do that. Yeah.
Cool. Do you write on your own? Do you have an editor? Do you have anyone who helps you with writing?
So typically I write on my own, and then when it's for clients, when it's for clients, they write, I'm the editor. In some cases, I do the writing, and then the client does a round of editing. But yeah, for that blog, and any stuff that I like, because I do a lot of marketing stuff on LinkedIn and then kind of turn that into an email newsletter. I write. I should be getting an editor, because every now and again I'll get a client that says, hey, great post, but found all these spelling and grammar mistakes. So my clients are my editors. They let me know where.
That's good. Yeah, keep writing. I mean, I'm actually talking to myself. Keep writing. I blog once in a while. It's hard to
get that motivation to do it.
Totally, with everything else going on. But sometimes the ideas just flow. Sometimes they just need to be written. So I try to sit down once in a while and make that happen. Where else can people find you, Kristie?
LinkedIn's where I'm most active. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I mostly
Kristie
spend most of
Holden.
my time.
Kristie Holden on. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to spell it out because no one knows how to spell Kristie. So people are just listening to it. Kristie.
Nice. And all this will be in our show notes, of course. Anything else you want to share?
Oh, I should have prepared something to share. No, I think I'm just really happy to be here and talk about this stuff, because I think it is still new. And I think it's important that people are aware that it's not, NFT projects are not just all like fraud and scams. I still get people that ask me like, hey, are you still working on like NFT stuff? Didn't that whole market crash and burn and just like disappear? And it's like, no.
Isn't Bitcoin dead?
Still going strong. I think we had a little bump today, or at least over the last week. That's right. It's like, I think you got to be in it for the long haul. You got to do it for the right reasons. And I think you need to have a vision and a mission. Like if you're interested in even starting in the Web3 space or transitioning into it, I think you have to be clear on your mission and your vision and who are you trying to build a connection with and how are you trying to make the world a better place in the little corner that you're playing in. I think that's really key.
Nice. All right. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
What would be your dream project in Web3?
My dream project. Okay, so I was manifesting this and then found out that we have a connection to that media outlet. So I'm a really big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Okay.
So I've always thought, okay, wouldn't it be really cool to work on a project around that brand? Partly to kind of like build a community and also just encourage like younger audiences that are starting to feel more comfortable with their sexuality or just people that love the entertainment of drag. That would be my dream project.
Nice. Nice. Have you reached out at all?
We have some connections to OTV. Yeah. So it's in the works.
Right.
What about you? What's your like dream ideal project?
Not nearly as exciting as RuPaul. But I'm formerly a physical therapist, and part of the reason why I got out of the profession, I owned a practice for 20 years. Part of the reason I got out of the profession was because of the squeeze that insurance companies have on providers. Basically, rates are set, and small providers in particular really you got to take it or leave it, whatever the insurance company decides they want to pay you. And it can take 60, 90 or more days to get paid. So my dream project would be to integrate an insurance system that pays providers immediately on the spot and really allows decentralized ownership of physical therapy or healthcare practices.
Interesting. Yeah, not as sexy, but it's still very needed and important. There's an emotional and a real need there.
Yeah. And I still love the profession of physical therapy. It really serves a great purpose for people. The big issue now is that most practitioners work for large corporations now, and it's just become commoditized. So if there's a way to infiltrate that, in particular, to really step in between where the insurance companies are really control the ecosystem, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So my eyes are open.
The world needs it. And especially with more and more people working remote and just constantly sitting at a desk, hunched over the computer, we probably need more of that.
Yeah, we do.
I've definitely had my fair share of like back injuries that I'm trying to recover from.
So get up and exercise, do some yoga like you told me you do, and touch some grass today. Take your dog for a long walk.
Oh yeah,
I'll do the same
today.
Nice. Great talking to you, Kristie. This was awesome, and I look forward to having you back on. You have a wealth of information, and I like your insight.
Awesome. Thanks so much. This has been great. A lot of fun.
Nice. My pleasure.